Hello everyone, my name is Ryan Cam and welcome back to the AFI Project. Today we're going to be taking a look at one of the all-time great westerns ever made, The Searchers. This was directed by John Ford, one of many collaborations that he would end up doing with this movie's main star, John Wayne. And it tells the story of Ethan Edwards, played by John Wayne, a soldier who fought in the Civil War on the Confederate side, who returns home to his family in Texas. But after his return, his home is destroyed by a band of Comanche Indians led by the chief Scar, and every member of his extended family is killed except for his two nieces, Lucy and Debbie, the latter of which is played by Natalie Wood. And so Ethan, alongside his half-Cherokee nephew Martin Pauly, played by Jeffrey Hunter, go out on a multi-year quest to find Debbie and bring her home. As I said at the beginning of the video, John Wayne and John Ford collaborated several times throughout their careers, but I believe this to be their greatest achievements. When you talk about all-time great westerns, the first few movies that come up are usually the Dollars Trilogy and The Searchers. Firstly, let's talk about the movie's cinematography. I feel like a bit of a broken record talking about how much the cinematography rules in many of the movies I've talked about in this review segment, but I gotta call a spade, and the cinematography in The Searchers is just unbelievable. While it was shot in other places, including Alberta, Canada, the movie is primarily shot in the Monument Valley. The Monument Valley is a set of canyons set on the border of Arizona and Utah, and you couldn't pick a better place to shoot a movie like this. Fun fact, before we move on, John Wayne personally asked for a making of to be made of The Searchers. This was the first of its kind, and up until today, people are still making behind the scenes or making of documentaries about the movies that they make. John Wayne invented that. The Searchers opens up with someone opening a door, and it ends with someone closing a door. It's that type of bookended stuff that it just rocks my world. Speaking of rocking, let's talk about John Wayne, because he is amazing. In many of the essays and reviews I've read when doing research for this video, I find that people use the word complex when talking about Ethan Edwards. And yeah, it's not hard to see why people use it, because the movie does a great job of showing that despite the fact Ethan Edwards is a bad guy, he's trying to do a good thing. Let's not make any bones about it. Ethan Edwards is a racist. I know the word racist gets thrown around willy-nilly like 100 times a day, but Ethan Edwards is a racist. He hates every kind of Indians. To him, a good Indian is a dead one. He fought on the Confederate side of the Civil War, and he outright says in the first scene of the movie, "I've sworn one allegiance, and that's to the Confederacy." Despite the fact that he is a man of very low moral fiber, he does have moments where you're like, oh god, that's just horrible. I think the peak of that is when he discovers that one of his nieces, Lucy, was brutally raped and murdered and buried in a canyon somewhere. He sees it, but doesn't let on to Martin Pauly or any of the other members of the party of it. And Lucy's fiancé, Brad Jorgensen, who is a part of that party, basically says Ethan is she, and Ethan just loses it. "What do you want me to do? Draw you a picture? Spell it out? Don't you ever ask me. As long as you live, don't ask me no more." Chill bumps up and down my spine. But Ethan Edwards is just a terrifying individual, not just in his words, but in just his presence. There are several scenes where Wayne just gives someone a look like, that was a bad example of it, but he just stares daggers through somebody. In one of my favorite shots in the entire movie, Ethan is in this cavalry camp, and he discovers a woman who has basically been brainwashed by the Comanche, and he turns and his hat covers up his eyes, so basically all you see is this, and his eyes are covered up by shadow. This symbolizes that he has no humanity anymore, and it is gone. This movie could really just star John Wayne and it would have been excellent. However, there is a good supporting cast attached as well. Let's talk about Jeffrey Hunter as Martin Pauly, because he has many good scenes as well. He's basically there to be the butt of Ethan's jokes. I'll talk about this movie's sense of humor in a little bit, but let's just stick to Hunter. He kind of comes off as a bit of a whiny teenager, where he is like, "Oh, Ethan, stop doing that to me!" And Ethan just like, One of the funnier scenes in the movie is when Martin accidentally marries an Indian woman, and Ethan just doesn't let him up from it. He's like, "Come along, Mrs. Pauly! Come along, Mrs. Pauly!" And Martin's just like, "Please don't do that." But he's not just the butt of all of Ethan's jokes. He actually stands up for himself and fights back, especially near the ending. And he is redeemed at the end. Everything does work out for him, which is just great. But now let's talk about this movie's sense of humor, because despite all of the serious stuff, this movie's actually kind of lighthearted in parts. It doesn't distract from the main plot, but there are some seriously funny moments. Ward Bond plays this Texas Ranger who's always so sure of himself, but then is like, "Oh, hell, Ethan, you can't do that." And it's funny every time. The great Vera Miles is in this as Lori Jorgensen, and she has many back and forths with Jeffrey Hunter that are really funny as well. But probably my favorite side character is old Mose. Mose has just one goal in life: to get to the age where he can just sit in a rocking chair all day long. I love that. I love the spirit of that. I want to get old enough so I can just be lazy all day. My man. But the funniest scene in the whole movie is when Martin Pauly and Charlie McCory have this fight outside of the Jorgensen house. It is just hysterical. Charlie McCory is another pretty funny character in his own right. So old Martin Pauly married himself a Comanche squaw. Ha, ha, ha. I could talk about The Searchers for days, but really I think this review's gone on long enough. The simple answer is, The Searchers is incredible. It's one of those movies that influenced so many directors, from Steven Spielberg to George Lucas. And that's honestly just naming a few. As a matter of fact, the next movie I'm going to be reviewing for the AFI Project was heavily influenced by The Searchers. In many ways, John Ford walked so people like George Lucas and Steven Spielberg could run. And at the end of the day, The Searchers is just one of those movies that I would recommend to absolutely everyone. It's one of those movies that you have to absolutely see before you die. But that is all for me, guys. Thank you so much as always for watching. Next time on the AFI Project, we're going to be taking a look at what happens when someone wanted to make a Flash Gordon movie, but instead made Star Wars, aka what happens when someone wanted to take over a town, but instead burnt down the town and built New York City in its place. But if you liked this video, please be sure to leave a like, comment your thoughts on The Searchers in the comments down below, and if you want to watch more videos like this, hit the subscribe button and click the bell to allow notifications. That way, when a new video drops, you'll be the first to know. My name is Ryan Cam. I'll see you in the next one.